helps. But we are live streaming at this particular juncture.
I haven't heard any different. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting for May the 13th, Town of Taber Town Council 2019. We first have a public hearing, so I'll first call that public hearing to order, please. For members of the public in attendance who wish to speak against or for the proposed bylaw number 6-2019, we'll have a 10-minute time limit for speaking. And anyone who does wish to come forward and speak must state their full name for the record. Mr. Arnfield?
Yes, we'll open up this public hearing with Ms. Monks giving us a brief introduction to the subject at hand, please.
Thank you, Ms. Monks.
Your Worship and members of Council, at the April 23rd Council meeting, first reading was given for bylaw 062019 for the Eureka Area Structure Plan. As per the Municipal Government Act, a public hearing must be held prior to finalizing the bylaw. Today is that public hearing, and administration would look for any input from the public or council. The bylaw will come back at a future meeting for possible second and third reading.
Great, thank you. Ms. Monks, has the Planet Economic Development Office received any written briefs against proposed bylaw number 6-2019? All right, thank you. Is anyone present who wishes to speak against proposed bylaw number 6-2019? Anyone present wishing to speak a second time? Anyone wishing to speak a third time related to bylaw number 6-2019? All right, thank you. And Ms. Monks, has the Planet Economic Development Office received any written briefs for the proposed bylaw 6-2019? All right, thank you. Is anyone present who wishes to speak for proposed bylaw number 6-2019? Is anyone wishing to speak for proposed bylaw 6-2019 a second time? And anyone wish to speak for proposed bylaw number 6-2019 a third and final time? All right, seeing none, I would ask someone prepared to make a motion. Mr. Begry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that council accepts the information provided at the public hearing, of which there was none, I guess.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously, thank you. And I hereby declare the public hearing closed. And I'll call the regular meeting of Town Council to order and ask for adoption of the agenda as presented. Councilor Garner?
I so move, Mr. Mayor.
Motion on the table. All in favor? Carried unanimously, thank you. Adoption of the minutes, item 3.1, minutes of regular meeting of council, April 23rd, 2019. Mr. Arnfield.
Yes, you have in front of you for your consideration meeting minutes from April 23rd, 2019 for your consideration.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? Someone prepared to make a motion? Councilor Bruin.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make the motion that council adopts the minutes of the regular meeting of council held on April 23rd, 2019 as presented.
Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 3.2, minutes of special meeting of council, April 29th, 2019. Mr. Arnfield.
Second for your consideration is the April 29th council meeting minutes.
Questions arising? Someone prepared to make a motion? Councilor Firth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that council adopts the minutes of the special meeting of council held on April 29th, 2019 as presented.
Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 4, business arising. There are none. Item 5, bylaws. Item 5.1, proposed supplementary assessment bylaw 10-2019. Mr. Arnfield.
Yes, I'd like to call Mr. Orwa up to speak to the supplementary tax assessment bylaw.
Hey, Mr. Orwa.
Thank you, members of council. So the bylaw before you today, assessment bylaw 10-2019, is just a regular yearly bylaw, which of course authorizes our town's assessor to assess the improvements that have not been previously assessed and any increased value of improvements out there. So this bylaw will allow assessors to do that.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Roy? Councillor Beckery.
Mr. Mayor, I'm prepared to make a motion.
All right,
I move that council gives first reading to bylaw number 11-2019, being the supplementary tax rate bylaw for the town of Tabor as presented.
motion on the table. Councillor Strauss.
Should be 10.
Did you say 11?
Yeah,
Should be 10.
It's 10.
It's 10?
it says 11 in mine. Bylaw
I
11.
believe that could be the next one that you've scrolled to.
Oh! I'm in a big hurry, Mr. Mayor.
All right,
I'll revise that motion then to read that bylaw number 10. First
right.
reading.
okay, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously, thank you. Someone prepared to make the second motion. Councillor Strauss.
That council gives second reading to bylaw 10-2019, being the supplementary assessment bylaw of the town of Tabor as presented.
Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously, thank you. And someone prepared to make the third requirement related to the bylaw. Councillor Bruin.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make the motion that council unanimously agrees to proceed with third and final reading to bylaw 10-2019 and being the supplementary assessment bylaw of the town of Tabor as presented.
Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously, thank you. Someone prepared to make the third and final motion. Councillor Thames.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, move that council gives third and final reading to bylaw 10-2019, being the supplementary assessment for the town of Tabor as presented.
Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Good, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Arwan. Item 5.2, proposed supplementary tax rate bylaw 11-2019. Mr. Armfield.
Yes, and this couples with the previous bylaw that you just passed. The previous bylaw gives us the authority to account for the values of those properties, and this one gives us the authority to collect the fees. Mr. Orwa, do you have anything to add?
I think that's exactly that. It now allows us to impose the supplementary tax based on the mill rates that have already been passed.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? Councillor Strauss.
Ready to proceed with motion, Your Worship?
Absolutely.
That council gives first reading to bylaw 11-2019, being the supplementary tax rate bylaw for the town of Tabor as presented.
Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously, thank you. Someone prepared to make the second motion. Councillor Bruin.
I'll make the motion, Mr. Mayor, that council gives second reading to bylaw 11-2019, being the supplementary tax rate bylaw of the town of Tabor as presented.
Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously, thank you. And someone prepared to make the third requirement for the bylaw. Councillor Garner.
I can do that, Mr. Mayor. The council unanimously agrees to proceed with third and final reading of bylaw 11-2019, being the supplementary tax rate bylaw of the town of Tabor as presented.
Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously, thank you. Someone prepared to make the third and final reading. Councillor Thames.
Mr. Mayor, move that council gives third and final reading of bylaw 11-2019, being the supplementary tax rate bylaw for the town of Tabor as presented.
Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Arwa. Item 6, action items. Item 6.1, Westview Playground Proposal. Mr. Armfield.
Yes, I'm going to call Ms. Phillips up to the podium, and I believe Mr. Workington may join her, or maybe he's just going to stay out of the limelight and observe. He's welcome to come up if he likes. Ms. Phillips is going to explain to council a proposal that we've had for a playground in the Westview area.
Great, thank you. Ms. Phillips.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, fellow council. At the May 2nd Rec Board meeting, there was a motion made by Councillor Beckering that the Rec Board support the Westview program or playground in principle. So we're bringing it to the council level. To give a little history, Mr. Workington approached administration regarding the desire of some residents of the Westview Estates to fundraise for a playground in the Westview development area. There is no playground planned anywhere in the near future. We are currently in phase 6 of development, and the playground is planned for phase 11. So, of course, depending on future development timelines. Mr. Workington asked if the green space south of the pond, just off of Westview Boulevard, would be suitable. And this, from a playground installation perspective, this is has been deemed a suitable location. We did inspect it with our playground inspectors. There is some consideration to be said about the busy street, as well as some neighbors concerned about the pond being in such close proximity. So a fence may be something that would be considered if that location was a consideration. Looking at the other green spaces in Westview, there are no other green spaces that would work at this point that are owned by the town. The rest is the developer's land. An important thing I do want to bring forward is that I have been approached by 2 individuals who live in houses adjacent to the park who are strongly against the development of a playground in that area based on the fact that they bought their house, there was no plans for a playground, and they don't want to see one there. I did tell them very clearly I would make sure that was brought forward. So if this project does get support from council, administration does request direction regarding the location and or community engagement regarding that. Mr. Workington is here asking for support for the project with regards to fundraising efforts to be able to give donation receipts on behalf of the town, as well as direction regarding the location, and is in attendance to answer any questions. I'm not sure if there's anything else you'd like to add.
Sure. I just want to thank you, Council and Mayor, for allowing me to come and meet with you today. I'm impressed with how expedited this process was. I was pleasantly surprised to get in front of the rec board relatively quickly and here as well today. So I'm very pleased with that. And you've done a great job of providing some background. I think the main thing to recognize is the park, as planned, is very far in the future. And any family that's currently in Westview probably won't have kids that playground age when the playground original design was going to come to fruition. So we're trying to expedite the process. Yes, the location wasn't as promised originally, and we're open to whatever location there was would work. Unfortunately, we're very limited to where that could be. So part of this process is making sure we're having a public consultation here to ensure that we please as many people as we can and make sure that's in the right location. And also, as you're all aware, if we're fundraising, the town of Taber can provide donation receipts as long as it's an approved project. So that I don't want to put the cart before the horse in terms of I would like to get council approval to move forward with this so we can proceed with building a park in Westview at some point in the near future. So once again, I want to thank you for entertaining this project. I look forward to working towards this, and I've solicited a Westview of 170 homes. There are a couple people who are unhappy about location, but I have not heard anybody who said they didn't want to park in the area. So I think it's a valuable asset in the community. It would be, because there's a lot of young families in that area. So thank you very much, Council and Mayor. I'll answer any questions you may have.
Any questions arising? Councilor Stravitz.
Worship to our delegation here. The area that you have is right front and foremost, and I imagine it'd be the 2 homeowners on either side to the east and the west that they're opposed to this playground there. On the north side of the lake there, is there an area there that could possibly be set aside for a playground there? I realize there's no grass or anything there, but perhaps with a little undertaking, it could be completed in that respect.
And that's one of the reasons we wanted to bring it to council. That area is part of the developer's land still. So if that's kind of a direction given to administration, the bottom half of the lake is, or the pond is our land, town's land. The rest is still with the developer.
Feel that the developer would be opposed to establishing a playground on the north side there?
I could ask Ms. Monks to speak on that.
I'm not certain if you're referring, I'm assuming you mean further to the north where we can't exactly see, because along the west side is very steep grade, and then of course in the middle of the pond would probably not be a great area. But I'm not certain. I mean, we've been having other negotiations with this developer. It's possible he would consider if we were attempting to purchase land or provide him with some other form of development credit to move that forward sooner, but those we would need to receive direction on negotiating further with that developer.
Follow-up question there. So where would stage 11 put that playground at roughly?
Through His Worship, it would continue up north and then over to the west, kind of in another angled strip above there.
Chances are that being developed is somewhere in the future, probably years away.
Through the chair, yes, that's true.
Any other questions arising? Councillor Bruin.
Mr. Mayor, I agree with what both speakers said here. It's a lot of kids in that neighborhood, and I think that's a good location. I imagine it would be a playground zone then, so it's going to lower the speed a bit in residential, which is, I feel, not a problem. So I support this fully. Willing to make the recommendation motion if you wish.
Councillor Garner.
I was just going to say I'm prepared to make a motion at this time also. So
Just to clear, any other questions whatsoever? I just have for Mr. Workington, just to be clear, is the concerns related to the extra activity / noise that may be attached to this? Is that the major concerns that's coming out of this?
The two individuals that called me live just east of the park, or the proposed park area, and yes, that's what they said, is the kids, there's already kids there playing. They didn't want more yelling, screaming kids in the park, basically. That's what I've understood. They chose the area because of the green space, the calm, yes. And their kids were older was what one of them said, so.
Thank you. Councillor Beckery.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In regards to that, what's the distance between the proposed location and the nearest neighbor who's not happy, please? Approximately.
I'm hesitant to.
Would it be 100 feet?
I'd say
looks to
yes.
me like it's 100
Yes,
feet for sure.
yeah.
Mr. Workington maybe can shed a little light.
What's that?
Just by looking at the map, I would estimate 100 feet, but it all depends on how big the park or the footprint of the park would be, whether we're closer to the path or farther. The other concern was that kids would be in danger of the proximity to the lake as well. Putting it farther towards the road and in the corner there where the blue circle is would be farther away from that individual's house maybe, but also closer to the house on the other side. So I'm open to suggestions of other locations as well. Unfortunately, we've looked at many other locations in Westview, not many, but there aren't that many to look at, and there doesn't seem to be any other feasible option.
Mr. Garner.
I like this location in that if you look at your map there, there's plenty of parking. You can park right beside it and drop kids off or pick them up. Where if you move this to another area in that residential area, you might be parking in front of people's homes and they don't like that so much.
Yeah, just in comparison, I don't know, I guess I can understand some concerns there, but it's, you look at what happened with the spray park here, for example. I mean, what are we, same thing about 100 feet from residents over there, right? There's a whole pile of activity over there now, and it's great, right? And to my knowledge, there hasn't been anything said about that per se. But again, everybody's got their reasons, and have to be cognizant of that fact. But yeah, what do you do? It's a green strip. I mean, it's a play area anyway, I guess, for one, right? You say kids are playing there already. Is that correct? So I don't know how much difference there is, and maybe some more activity, but I don't know. It's yeah, I like the concept, and it's ideally, Mr. Workington, you're looking to have this done this season, if at all possible. Was that the vision?
Well, any optimistic person would want it done as quickly as possible, but it's contingent on a couple factors: this approval,
right,
but also how much money we have and how long that takes to get in place. But realistically, we're in May already, so probably unlikely in the next month
for
or two.
This year. Oh, so still for this season?
No, I'm saying probably unlikely.
Unlikely
to
because,
be done in the next couple months, considering we're still in the idea phase.
Fair enough. All right. Yeah, that's, Councilor Becker, sure.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question for Mr. Armfelt. Given that Mr. Workington has done considerable consultation, or at least visited lots of the adjoining landowners or homeowners, does administration recommend more consultation on behalf of council or not?
Yeah, administration would probably undertake some consultation with that neighborhood, some door hangers like we had talked about, just that council had approved this, and if you have concerns, please let us know, depending on what came out of council, of course. But we had talked about another just sweep through the neighborhood, with particularly within that area, not the entire Westview, but just some of the homes within the radius around that proposed location.
Councilor Brown.
I'm prepared to make a motion that council supports the Westview Estates Community Group's fundraising efforts for installation of playground in Westview Estates and provide administration with regarding this location, which I feel this site is the right site.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Councilor Tams.
Would you entertain a friendly amendment and provide direction to administration to canvass the nearby residents for their opinion?
I could. I just understood that they would go about that if we passed this motion.
I think we need to give direction to tell them to do that.
That can happen either or, but it's Mr. Armfelt. You fine with that?
Good amendment.
Yeah, and just to, what would council like to, with administration to do with that information? If we go and solicit that information, we get something back, you've made a motion, but within that motion, you've also told us to canvass the neighborhood. We can provide that information back within our information request for decision agenda item that we put together.
Canvass the neighborhood and report back to council, and we could carry on from there. I think it's going to come back here one more time.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilor Brown.
I believe the group canvassed the neighborhood already. I don't know why we'd waste more time.
Councilor Becker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It seems to me that if council passes this particular motion, and then there's some canvassing being done or some consultation, and if approved that there was more than 2 people not in favor, what do we do with the information? Once you make a decision, you made a decision, right? So I'm just wondering whether we should even get involved in that any longer. I'm not sure, Mr. Mayor. I'm just asking a question.
All right, thank you, Mr. Armfelt.
Council could amend a motion to indicate that they're agreeing in principle, subject to report back of resident feedback. So approve the location in principle, subject to administration undertaking some resident feedback and reporting back to council on that. It's another alternative.
Mr. Mayor, I would just what the RCO said there, with his recommendation about canvassing that, for add that to my motion.
Councilor Chavez.
Just perhaps one more question to our delegation here. Do you have any documentation of names of people that were opposed and people that were for? I mean, did you actually take names down and put a check mark beside them? Do you have something more substantial?
I should be clear, I'm a resident of Westview. I'm an informal basis going around getting support. So I don't represent an organization. I'm an informal body of individuals, interested party who want to do this. So no, I don't have exact names. Maybe administration has those individuals that they can talk about. But I guess if I could make a comment or a question, if 1, 2, 3, 4 people are opposed to it, at what point does this criteria become where you say no? And if that were the case, if I could ask that maybe the motion represent an alternative location, if that were the case.
Ms. Phillips.
I did take the names of the 2 individuals that contacted me.
Councilor Chavez.
Clarification, and so they're on the east side of that? It's not the one on the west side and the one on the east side. They're both on the east side?
Both on the east side. Do you want to know which locations?
No,
okay.
that's
They're
fine.
both on the east side, in close proximity to the park.
So are they right next door or?
No.
Oh, they're not right. They're not.
One is,
okay.
and the other is
further down the way.
a couple down.
Okay. All right. No, that. Yeah. Thank you.
right, Councillor Thames.
I do believe, Mr. Mayor, and as much as I like the plan for this, but I do think that it is our duty to check with the residents. They bought a piece of property there with a development plan, and now there's coming a park. And I'm not opposed to a park, and I think kids should have parks. But I think it is our duty to canvass the residents that live in that neighborhood as to what their opinion is. They bought a piece of property with a vision, with a plan. And I think it is encompassing on this council and our administration to go make sure that we have visited those in that neighborhood and listened to their concerns, whether pro or con. But I think we really need to pay attention to the residents that live in the area. They're entitled to say their piece.
All right, thank you. Councillor Bruin,
I accepted the friendly amendment there about the canvassing, and I'll let Sand assist with that.
Just to clarify, can we see the friendly amendment in motion, please? Happy with that?
I'm happy with that, but perhaps could we put a date on that so you could report back by next council meeting?
That may be a little quick, Mr. Arnfield. Does that give administrators enough time?
Yeah, it's pretty tough with how the council meetings line up, especially when with the breaks are. We really only have about 4 days to do any work in between this council meeting and agenda setting for the next council meeting. So it's tough to go out and canvass a neighborhood in any sort of meaningful way within that 4-day period.
Okay, well, the next convenient meeting somehow, meeting after that perhaps?
The first meeting in June is probably sufficient. If we could probably meet the first meeting in June.
Yes, if I could add that to motion that administration reports back to council by the first meeting in June. For the first meeting in June, thank you.
Do you want to just clarify that date, Councillor Bruin?
I'm assuming it's June 10th.
Okay. All right. Friendly amended motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 6.2, AUMA request for participation on the Alberta Law Enforcement Advisory Committee. Mr. Arnfield.
Yes, the next council agenda item is a request from AUMA. They are soliciting names for interested parties to be a participant on their Alberta Law Enforcement Response Team Civilian Advisory Committee. So if we put a name for it, it's not a slam dunk to that individual. It goes to AUMA and then they select from the list that they're getting.
Correct. All right. Councillor Thames.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I do believe that we have a councillor that has identified himself as willing to put his name forward to this. And Councillor Garner, are you still of that opinion that you would like to put your name forward for this?
I've thought a little more about it, and I think Mr. Beckering might be interested also. I've talked with Councillor Bruin. I think he might be interested, but in light of that, I think we've got two fine candidates there. I like Mr. Beckering's past history being an RCMP himself, so I'm willing to slide off to the side and fade into the sunset on that one.
Councillor Stramas.
Your Worship, just for clarification, I thought we went through this process late last year sometime where we identified a candidate to be on the alert board or a representative on there one other time. And I realize this is through the AUMA, but did the other one come through the police commission, or was it? I know there was another one that we had went through.
So that was actually a member of the alert committee. So that was a representative, a citizen representative for the actual alert. This is an advisory committee advising alert on policy directions that AUMA may be wanting to vet through this committee and then provide to alert. But that position was actually a member on that alert committee itself.
Just for clarification,
we were not
accepted.
Successful.
Okay, all right. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Beckering.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Gardner. I would consider letting my name stand. I can give you a little bit of history on Alert. Alert has changed considerably in the last year and a half or so. Alert at one time was comprised of mainly civilian members, and then the government of the day changed that to Alert Board being exclusively police officers, whether RCMP or municipal police officers, and thus this advisory committee, Mr. Mayor. This advisory committee has no legislative powers, has no teeth as such, but it can give recommendations to the board, which is comprised of, I believe, all serving police officers. Perhaps the odd retired one, but I don't think so.
Thank you. Councillor Bruin.
Mr. Mayor, the reason I was interested in sitting on this is that I sit on the AUMA Police Act Working Group, and this kind of ties into it a little bit. We have discussed alert in that group, and I would like to let my name stand for this position as well.
Councillor Thames.
And I appreciate that from both Councillor Beckering and Councillor Bruin and also Councillor Garner, but I think the more voices, the better. We have Councillor Bruin on this one. If we have Councillor Beckering on that one, I think it shares the load, and also I think it would be the more voices, the better. The more informed we also become as a council.
All right, thank you.
I'll withdraw my name, Mr. Beckering.
All right, thank you. Someone prepared to make a motion? Councillor Thames.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I move that council identifies Councillor Garth Beckering to represent the town of Taber as an interested participant on the Alberta Alert Enforcement Response Team Civilian Advisory Committee. There's that line. Wow.
All right, motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 6.3, coffee with the council follow-up and action items. Mr. Armfield.
Yes, administration is looking for some direction. There's been a number of items that have come out of your Coffee with Council initiatives, which I think are great and a real good success. We direct people that have concerns often to Coffee with Council. What's come out of that, though, on the administrative side is those requests that come in and then the answers that your administration provides. There's not really a set format for how we get that information back to the person that has questioned that. Mr. Mayor, you and I have discussed with a worksheet sort of format that they could be captured on a worksheet, and then the worksheets come back to administration. We provide an answer, and then it's within the Coffee with Council binder that floats from the administration building back to the venue. That certainly could work. We just wanted to open this conversation up for council to give administration some direction on how we should be administratively dealing with these questions or requests that come in.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? That's, Mr. Armfield's correct. We did have some discussion on that, and I saw a bit of a gap there where several of us are taking notes, and some are being followed up on, some are not likely. And so I guess we need to be consistent, bottom line there. And a lot of the follow-ups are traffic related, all things considered. There has been other items as well, but that seems to be the, geez, I don't know, 80% of the focus lately, correct? What's been out there for whatever reason. But so there was a variety of things I'd passed on to Mr. Armfield and the traffic committee that they had dealt with here just at the last meeting. So it was my suggestion or idea to do something like the traffic committee is already doing with how they report to council. We see that quarterly in that regard. And there's an ongoing history about everything that happens there. With so it can be checked if it happened a month ago or 2 years ago, kind of thing, right? So I think it would be beneficial all the way around for all of council involved, so that we can take a binder, as Mr. Armfield referred to, with us for that Coffee with Council date that has the history. So if Mr. Smith, for lack of a better name, is there and asks a question about something that occurred that maybe I wasn't there or any of the rest of us wasn't there, and you look back at the date when that came up, and it's an itemized action request that was done, and whatever follow-up was followed through on, etc. And or what Mr. Arp was asking also was as far as follow-up with the people asking. I think that's probably important also. And right now, as far as the complaint format on our website, that's followed up. Like Lisa, for example, follows up regular with that, correct, Lisa? With any traffic-related complaints, your end, whatever's followed up that way. You generally do that yourself, I believe. Right, yeah. So we need to have something similar, I think, just so there's something consistent across the board. And so whoever's at that Coffee with Council can easily check that reference up-to-date manual, and away you go. But some other kind of a form that we also have that you can jot down the date, the person's name, contact number, and whatever the base gist of the complaint is, and followed up by our effective and efficient administration. And does that sound reasonable and streamlined enough? Councillor Firth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I like that idea. I think also when you have the feedback in that binder, it provides you with some information. So if the question's been asked before, lots of times there'll be repeat questions. There's subjects that residents have lots of questions about. So then that information is right there at hand, and then the message is consistent. It's not one councillor's opinion, it's the information that we have.
Right. Any questions, Councillor Strawas?
Your Worship, this whole process started to kind of be just a casual type thing. Are we going to make this a formal thing now, where we're going to be taking notes and getting back to administration? I realize there's a gap in here, but I don't know. It seemed like it's getting a little bit too structured.
You know what? I guess that's a good question. Fair question, Councillor Strawas. But I think all things considered it's sort of evolved into this. And it was an open-ended, transparent item to be part of our strategic plan that we followed through on. And again, it's just kind of evolved as a result with what's come out of it. I don't know that we knew exactly what to expect out of Coffee with Councils, but there's been a variety of topics and great discussions with our residents that do attend. Councillor Beckert.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My opinion, I guess, is that if people are good enough to come to one of these Coffee with Council meetings and they're brave enough to ask questions and complain about something, I guess we should be good enough to give a response for sure. So I think, even though I agree with Councillor Strover, it's somewhat structured all right, but I think we owe people an explanation, certainly, or response to the question. And it should be noted somewhere so we are on the same page like Councillor Firth said.
Anything else? All right, someone prepare to make a motion?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Let me just, I think the coffee with council has been a great deal and a good idea, but I agree with Joe. We're turning this more into a public meeting setting instead of a casual coffee discussion. So I think any council one that I've attended, have all taken notes and they were acted upon actually. So I'm just thinking you're heading more to public meetings instead of a casual coffee discussion.
Anything else? Councilor Garner?
I understand what you're saying, Councillor Broom, but I think that an item not written down oftentimes is only a wish. Really, when you want to get things done, you got to put it on paper so that there's some traction to it, and there's some accountability too. And I think it opens that two-way communication, whether they want to be responded to with their concern through an email or a text message or a phone call. At least we have some trackability with those people.
Strauss.
Your worship, I'm scared if we get too structured, it's going to be like a council meeting where residents are scared to come because there's going to be a process they're going to have to follow and whatnot. I mean, if residents have a real issue that they want to identify with, a lot of times they don't come to a structured meeting because they don't want to stand up and be singled out or whatever. And I don't know. I really enjoy the casualness of it. You can sit down, talk around the table, and you can say, and you can react to things without knowing that everything is going to be notarized and whatnot. I think we might be setting a precedent here, and pretty soon we're going to have an extra council meeting, and it's going to become structured, and people are going to say, I'm not going to go to that. I don't want my name recognized and whatnot, and it's supposed to be a casual thing. It was originally supposed to start out for us to go to coffee shops and have a coffee and just talk and hear concerns, and so now it's evolved into another structured meeting, and I have my reservations about that.
Well, fair statement, Councilor Strauss, but I think all things considered, again, like I said, it has evolved to some degree, but a lot of that is very casual, and a lot of the questions are answered forthright as a result, and dealt with without any need for follow-up. But there are a number of times where all of us don't have all the answers, correct? So we have to do some follow-up ourselves in that regard, and or generally require administration's assistance to follow up as well. So I don't know how you don't have some form of structure there in some of the questions that come up for topics for discussion.
Just, Your Worship, we have an item in our agenda package where we can bring those concerns to and make it a public motion. Where the administration's already set that up with the idea is to meet on a one-on-one basis with residents and bring it in, and I think it's up to the council member that takes it in hand and brings it to that agenda item there where you bring it forth and get everybody's opinion on it and see from there on if we want to go into a motion for it. I still think we're getting too structuring here.
Councilor Garner?
I think if you were on the other side and if you were a citizen of Tabor, like we all are, I think I would appreciate it if I had a concern that the person that I'm giving that concern to, that body of people, would at least write it down and take my phone number. And so that, it's like, at least we can follow through. I mean, that's just good business sense, I think.
All right, thank you. Councilor Temps?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. I'm of the same opinion as Councilor Strovis that we don't need to have it a really structured thing. And I think, we have a number of alternatives that have been presented to us, and council could choose to ask council members to bring these items up through a notice of motion, because I've never attended one of these where everybody's there. We're not all there at the same time, dependent on circumstances and stuff. But I think it becomes more incumbent upon council and council members that here's what I heard, here's the concern, and I can bring that through. And if it comes up through a standing item at council, we've repeated their concern, the question, and then it's given to administration to address, and it comes back to a council plate. The minute we have to go make it formal, I'm afraid that people are gonna say, I'm not going. When it's relaxed and they can express their concern, that it becomes incumbent upon council members to bring that as a standing item. Here's what come up at Coffee with Council. Here's the questions that asked. It becomes a standing item, but it becomes something that they know full well has been brought to council's attention because we brought it as a standing item, and we can get an answer to them. Because not everything has to be a formal form letter and everything else. So I'm concerned that we're going to make it too formal also.
Councillor Firth.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate all the concerns that have been raised. I don't think having a consistent way to respond to people that come out makes it any less casual. But if I, exactly like Councillor Garner said, if I was a resident and I'm taking time out of my day to come and raise a concern, I think it's just common courtesy to respond. In whatever way, it doesn't necessarily need to be via a notarized letter. It can just be an email or a text or however that person wants the feedback to be returned to them.
Great, thank you. Councillor Brown.
I agree with Joe and Councillor Strauss and Councillor Tamser. I'm trying to think of an instance where we didn't act on anything that we were told about or had an answer that solved the problem. But I don't think we need to be so structured. It's hard to get to those coffees with council all the time, and it shouldn't turn into a meeting.
All right, well, it is a meeting. It's Coffee with Council. It is a scheduled meeting. We've agreed to that. 2 meetings a month, so no matter how you stack it, it's a meeting. Casual or not, however you want to determine what it may or may not be. But it's this from somebody that speak for myself, comes from extreme structure background. This is pretty limited structure. This is basic. This is very basic, and I think it's reasonable accountability and expectations for the public at large that attend and take the time to voice their concerns. So a little follow-up I don't think is a bad thing at all, and is expected, actually. All right, anything else? Someone prepared to make a motion?
First, are you working on that motion, or do you want me to start something?
I'm just considering. I think I can put something together.
Thank you.
I move that council direct administration to put together a binder that can be brought to Coffee with Council sessions in order to provide consistent feedback to residents about the concerns raised at those sessions.
Councillor Strauss.
Just a question. So who's going to be in charge of this binder to getting it back and forth?
I would say the mayor or deputy mayor or other.
And if the mayor and the deputy mayor can't attend, who's going to make sure that it's there?
Well, then I would hope they would ensure that somebody is going to be there for the Coffee with Council sessions.
There's your structure.
Well, we always have an administrative person attend to deal with our coffee, donuts, drop-offs. So at the very least, I don't know that would that be a problem, Mr. Armfield, as far as you're aware, if that's a concern?
No administration could add that to our list of duties.
I don't mind taking it myself. If we're going to go that route, I will certainly pick it up if that's a need, but I don't know that that's a make or break it kind of scenario. But however, yeah, I would certainly offer to do that if I'm able to attend. Councillor Strauss.
Your Worship, I just want to make note that council, Coffee with Council has turned into an administrative function where they have to do the follow-up and work now. So something that we worked as a council has got put onto administration's shoulder to make sure that that stuff is put forth and back and forth for us. I think that's wrong.
All right. Anything else? Motion on the table? Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. On to item number 6.4, support for Bachelor of Engineering program. Mr. Armfield.
Yes, I'm going to call Ms. Monks up. Essentially, the University of Lethbridge is looking for a letter of support from a number of stakeholders in the area as they endeavor to start an engineering program. Ms. Monks.
Your Worship and members of Council, the University of Lethbridge has contacted our Economic Development Group requesting that the town might provide a letter of support for their application to the province for certification of their local Bachelor of Engineering program. Administration would see this as a benefit to the town in attracting new students to the region, as well as assisting with keeping our youth in the community rather than having them relocate in order to follow an engineering path. It also assists with our economic development strategies in assisting with being able to provide skilled labor to businesses in the Taber area and the southern region. We've prepared a draft letter that's been provided for council, and if you were in support of that letter, it could be submitted on behalf of the town, or we could make amendments as you saw fit.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? Councillor Tams.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I'm prepared to make a motion because I think it's a fantastic plan. That council directs administration to provide a letter of support to the University of Lethbridge Bachelor Engineering program.
Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you. Item 6.5, radar sign policy. Mr. Armfield.
Yes, Ms. DeBona. Yes, she's coming up representing the traffic committee. This policy has gone through the traffic committee for consideration of that group and is being recommended to council for approval.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. So in 2017, the town purchased a portable radar speed sign as part of the capital budget for the purpose of public safety enhancement and education to citizens regarding their speed limits in areas of town that were flagged as having an issue. Through the traffic committee, this policy was created and the corresponding procedure to govern how that sign will be used. We ask that you approve or request changes to the policy. It's just to basically say what the purpose of this sign is in the town and what department is responsible for governing that sign and how that will work. The procedure is just for information only, and we ask that you approve the policy.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? Councillor Broom?
I just asked a question to Mr. DeBona. What was our policy before this policy with the radar sign? Like, what are we changing? There hasn't been any policy.
No. We recognize the need for one.
Okay. Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I'm prepared to make a motion that council approves the radar speed sign policy number PS-PW-3.
All right, motion on the table. Any further discussion? I have a question actually related to the policy, Mr. Armfield. I just see in there that the sign was to be designated a week at a time, both directions. So that takes up 2 weeks for one location, if that's the case. And saying that for our roughly 30 weeks of fair weather, that's only 15 locations within the town if you go that route. So that's the only concern I have as far as that goes. I'm just wondering if that can be amended to have something suggested to as needed, as required. I don't know if you put it at one location, it's a problem area. I don't know what difference it makes going the other direction per se. Do you know what I'm saying? Like it's north, south.
Is that in the policy or is that in the procedure? The 2 weeks. I think that's
in the procedure.
Procedure. Yeah, I can certainly amend that when it hits my desk.
Just a thought. It just struck me that we're limiting ourselves. If we got, I have no idea. Like different years can change accordingly, I'm sure. But if we do that, we're limiting ourselves as far as the amount of location you can have. If that's the case.
Yeah, we can change that. Ultimately, the very first policy statement, I believe, is the one that puts us into the hands of the traffic committee, ultimately for management. Where does that say that, Ms. DeBona? Number 3, management of the radar sign will occur within the traffic committee with involvement from the Public Works Department. Yeah, so actually, Nistabone has a very thorough schedule for the rest of the summer for where that sign's going to be at for the rest of the summer, endorsed by the traffic committee. So we should, when that hits my desk, we'll talk about amending the week one way, the week the other way. It's
the way we kind of think of it, like for the Public Works Department, for putting it out, having it a week at one location, and then knowing that so every Monday it's going out somewhere, the next Monday it's flipping, the next Monday it's coming back to be reprogrammed. Just we know that on the Monday we're doing something with that sign. So it's consistency and ease of scheduling the crew.
Mr. Mayor, but there's nothing, if we have a trouble spot, say when Cornfest is on or something, we want to make sure people are monitoring their speed, we still have the ability to move it wherever we want.
Yeah, you can pull it and move it by special authority. We could put some wording to that effect.
Strauss?
Your Worship, I like the way they have it set up for a week this way and a week that way. I think it gives you great coverage. We're a small community. If we move it every week to a different location, whatnot, pretty soon we're going to run out of locations. We're not a huge community. So I like the way I've liked their due diligence, the way they've got it put through, and I don't think it needs any adjustments. I think they've thought it out well, and I think the policy and the procedure is done quite well.
Right, anything else? Right, once again, motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried now. Thank you. Item 6.6, write down of assets policy. Mr. Armfield.
Yeah, we've got a couple here coming from the finance department. Mr. Orwa, there's a write down and a write off, and I believe we are writing down first. Yes. And then we're writing off next.
Thank you, Council, again. So we're just reviewing some of these policies, and the policy you have before you there is write down of assets policy number SCS-FIN-2. So this is one of the policies that when I'm reviewing it, we look at very closely also with the auditors as well, because it touches on the financial statements, both policies. So we've reviewed this particular policy that you have before you. And at this point, there is no change. So we just recommend to Council to adopt the policy.
All right, thank you. Any questions or anything? Councillor Beckering?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Orwa, can you give an example of a write-down asset, please?
So a write-down of asset, when you're talking of a write-down, it's just an accounting treatment that recognizes the reduction in value of an asset. That is when an asset is impaired. For example, you could have an equipment or you could have a building or something. If it's impaired in any way, it could be damaged, it's still existing, but now the value will come down. Let's say the value of that particular asset was 100,000, and maybe the asset is impaired in a way or the other. What would happen is we'll have to review that particular asset, and if the current value is at 80, we'll have to write down that asset to 80. So normally, a write-down of asset comes into place when an asset is impaired in way or the other, in any form or the other.
Mr. Mayor, as a follow-up question, so this is not a depreciating item, it's just a...
Total impairment of an asset.
Thank you.
Depreciation is just the capital cost of wear and tear of that particular asset.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Chavez?
Your Worship, to Mr. Orwa, so you're writing down the asset and you're depreciating it. You depreciate everything that you have, all your assets that you have anyway. So in this type of a case, are you I'll use the word depreciation, but are you depreciating it twice as fast because you're going to do a write down as well?
Yeah, of course, when you write down an asset, the value decreases. And when the value decreases in that for the town, our policy is straight line method, which is you just take the total cost of that particular asset and divide by the number of years which has been specified. So what that means is if it's 100,000 over 5 years, then you know how to write that one down. So when you reduce the value, then of course it will go faster because the value is lower. And normally the difference there is when an asset is impaired, it could be damaged in any way or the other that was not expected. But on the depreciation side, it's over time. If it's 20 years, then you just keep on reducing it over time. But between even the first year you buy an asset today, it is 200,000. Something happens to that past asset and it is impaired in such a way that it will no longer function than the intended purpose. then the value on our books must go down.
Anything else? Someone prepared to make a motion? Councillor Towns.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I move that council approves the write-down of assets policy CS-FIN-2 as presented.
Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 6.7, write-off of disposal assets. Mr. Armfield.
Yes, and then the next is the write-off, actually. Mr. Orwa, you want to explain that one, please?
Thank you very much. So this is now we're writing off the asset. And of course, when you're writing off the asset, it's now deleting the fixed asset from the books. And of course, when you delete it from the books, you now clean up all the accumulated depreciation that has been in that book so that it's no longer in existence. So this is an area where we have also reviewed, and of course, at this point, I would recommend to council to adopt because there are no changes to be made.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? Councillor Firth.
No questions, but I'm ready to make a motion. I move that council approves the write-off and disposal of assets policy CS-FIN-3 as presented.
Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 6.8, policies proposed for repeal. Mr. Armfield.
Yeah, I'm going to ask Mr. Munshot to come through. We're moving through the strategic plan initiative to clean up all the policies, and the fire department has 4 of them for consideration.
Chief Munshot.
Chief Munshot.
Worship, council members, we have 4 policies to repeal today, or look at repealing. I'll walk through them with you if you have a moment. The first one is CP Rail invoicing policy. Since the time we established this invoicing policy, we've also established the bylaw with 05-2016 that follows the fee structure and has been adopted by CP Rail fee structure bylaw. So we've already encompassed that within our bylaw as well as their corresponding agreement. Second, number 2 change will be the charge of use for fire equipment on primary highways. Since we've dealt with this, we also included in that same bylaw in 2016, and we also followed Ministry of Transportation's agreement to the Alberta Fire Chiefs following a standard fee structure that corresponds with 1, 2, and 3-digit highways. So we have that covered within our bylaw. Next, number 3, we have the fire inspection report policy, which we are now covering under the adoption of the Alberta Quality Management Plans, followed under the Safety Act of Alberta, which we follow provincially and was adopted in 2005. We just were elected taking care of that back then. And the last one, as everybody has seen, we have the expenditure and emergency services situations or budget over expenditures, and that was currently dealt with the Municipal Emergency Management Bylaw of 2004 or 04 to 2011. Sorry about that. We'll also be coming for an amendment very shortly with Deputy Chief Cote. We'll be bringing that forward in the next coming months. With that, I have any questions?
Great, thank you. Any questions arising? Councillor Thames.
Not a question to the chief, but a question to Corey. Can we repeal all of these as one, or you want them individually?
Individually, please.
With that, Mr. Mayor, I'm prepared to make a motion. All right. That council repeal CP Rail invoicing policy 50-82611.
Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Councillor Firth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that council repeals charge for use of fire equipment on primary highways policy 39S-619/81.
Great. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Third requirement, Councillor Garner.
I can make a motion that council repeals fire inspection reports policy 13C-81715.
Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. And the fourth requirement, Councillor Beckering.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll move that council repeals expenditure policy AJ, emergency situations A, emergency situations B, budget over expenditure 51C-23/01/95.
Great. Thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Good. Thank you. All right, on to item 6.9, information for council. Mr. Armfield.
There's 3 items there for council's consideration: the draft meeting minutes from our last council, or from our last traffic committee meeting, the radar sign report from 64th Avenue, which I can speak to at the next agenda item, a little bit more fuller. And then we had the radar sign down on Heritage Drive. That, I believe, was complaint-based. Lisa, was that? Yeah. So the information is there for council's consideration. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? All right, somebody prepared to make a motion. Councilor Firth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that council accepts the material received in this agenda item as information.
Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 610, standing item, council requests. Mr. Armfield.
There's a number of requests on the list. I'd like to provide an update to one of them. Would council like to begin this though with any questions or requests that you have, or how would you like to?
You can. Has anybody got anything specific they would like to bring up today as a standing council item? Seeing none, go forward.
The one I would just like to apprise council of is actually the motion that was made by Councillor Strovis to have a look at the speed on 64th Avenue. You'll have the data in front of you from when the speed sign was on 64th Avenue. We did find a fairly high speeding rate on that. There was a fair amount of speeding that goes on 64th Avenue. That was displayed by the sign. We're actually putting the sign back out there again, I believe, Mr. Bona, to capture a bit more information on 64th Avenue. What we're doing though, and another item we're looking at is we've engaged a traffic engineer to actually look at 64th Avenue. 64th Avenue has got quite the difference in interface from 50th Street to Highway 36. Closer to 50th Street, on the east side of 50th Street, but still closer to 50th Street on 64th Avenue. There's a number of intersections there. There's a number of driveways and road intersections onto 64th Avenue. From the Storm Pond to the east, to 64th, on 64th to Highway 36, there's many less intersections. And so when a traffic engineer proposes a speed on a road, they look at the number of vehicles, they look at the number of intersections, and they look at the width of that road itself. And then that's how they come up with a proposed speed. So we've asked a traffic engineer to look into that around the issue of all of the access points closer to 50th Street as you progress west on 64th Avenue. So I just wanted to let council know that that's in the works, and we will probably be coming back with a proposal, not quite sure when, in the coming weeks, few weeks.
Within a month for the report from the sign that the engineer, I'm not sure what his schedule is like right now, so we're just waiting for that letter.
Okay. So anyway, we're working on that one. It's a bit of a because that 64th Avenue is not uniform from an access perspective from 50th Street to Highway 36. It's quite variable, and we want to make sure that we get our recommendation right. So that's what we're working on with a traffic engineer right now.
Great, Councillor Chavez.
Your Worship, just as a comment follow-up to that there, and I mean, you'll see that 84% of the people traveling up and down that access road are speeding. So that's a clear indication that there is some problems there.
All right, thank you. So that's already been established, as you said, right? That information come out there. So, all right. Yeah, I'm sure that some enforcement activity is certainly in order, if that's the case.
Yeah, I would recommend to the councillors that are on the police commission, make that known at the police commission level that you would like some enforcement happening on 64th Avenue, given the evidence that you've seen at the council table for the number of vehicles that are speeding there.
This is did it have the range? I don't remember the exact. Was it the range for that 84% where they're speeding?
Yes, it's quite broke down quite extensively here, their speeds and the percentages and whatnot. So yes.
So I think that's 84% is sky high. So I think that needs to be crystal clear, there's a need for some enforcement in that particular area sooner than later. So I think the sooner that can be passed on to our very effective, efficient Tabor Police Service, that would be beneficial all the way around. All right, someone prepared to make a motion? Anyone?
Sure, what kind of a
Just
motion?
Just an information. Okay. Or do we need one in this case? I
Yeah,
guess?
not necessarily.
You're
We don't
just-
necessarily need a motion there.
We don't
There
have
was-
another
No, there was nothing
actual
that
outstanding
you
stand
told
item.
us to do, and it was just some feedback I wanted to
Okay.
let council know of. Yeah.
Right, fair enough. Any other questions arising or standing item discussions needed? Okay. We'll go on to the next one, which is delegations. There are no delegations and or meeting inquiries. Tabor Times, Trevor.
So you have to stand to this thing. I don't know.
Just about a foot away is
Okay.
probably less.
I just have a question in relation to the resolution you guys made at the special meeting on Thursday. That was subject to auditor approval, right? Does it have auditor approval?
Sorry, I'm not sure what that.
I'm just asking
question.
whether that's received auditor approval because I noticed
Oh.
it's on your in-camera agenda as well, and I'm just kind of trying to determine if there's going to be a radical alteration of some kind made to that resolution. Because if we go to press on Wednesday with a story from that meeting and then you guys completely alter that's not going to be good for anybody, right? So
I think in all fairness, that's going to come up in some discussion, correct, Mr. Armfield, in closed session? Is this not?
Yes, according to FOIP, council will be receiving some advice from their officials.
So I guess to answer that question at this stage, we can't answer that question, sorry, at the moment.
So would I be able to find out, as soon as possible, not necessarily following the meeting, but tomorrow morning, as to whether there's any resolutions made regarding that?
Absolutely, I think that's
Yeah.
applicable
Yeah,
if that
if
comes
you'd
up
like
for
to
sure.
Give me a call or I'll phone you, however you'd like to.
Sure, yeah. I guess this kind of ties into that in a way, but just resolutions following in camera, are those being consistently live streamed, if at all?
That's a good question. Did we? I don't know. We normally don't live stream. We shut it off before we go into closed session. So, yeah, I don't believe we're doing that. Correct? Yeah. So there's usually only a handful of motions come out as a result there, but those are available first thing the following morning for sure. Once they're made public, but there's nobody here.
Yeah.
But the doors are open. They're made in public accessibility. But so that's generally been the format. Either yourself calls or one of your colleagues or the.
Yeah. I don't know. I just I thought if it's part of the public portion of the meeting,
I guess
not sure why
in all fairness, we generally send our IT people home. So that's kind of the concept behind that, correct, Mr. Armfield?
Yeah, it is a slight inconsistencies with live streaming the entire public portion of the meeting. We certainly could fire up the camera again and for that 30 seconds.
Yeah, I guess
if there is a motion.
that's a fair question, Trevor. Actually, but
the only reason I ask is because it would actually make my life a lot easier rather than having to either wait 2 weeks for the minutes
So that
to
you
come
can
out
check
or
yourself.
just go and look at it next morning and find out what resolutions were made following in camera. But at any rate, that's all I had for you guys.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
And you can give me a call, Trevor, the next morning for sure.
All right, I believe we're scheduled for a dinner break, so I just need a motion to close the meeting for now. Councilor Beckert?
Also move, Mr. Mayor.
All right, motion on the table. All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. We reconvene at 5:00.